He thought she was just a civilian, a pretty face sipping whiskey in a Navy town. But when Lieutenant Commander Declan O'Malley arrogantly asked for her call sign, the two words she whispered didn't just silence the bar, they resurrected a classified ghost from his bloodiest mission. She wasn't looking for a hero. She was the one who had saved him. The air inside the Rusty Rudder smelled of stale beer, lemon polish, and the specific brand of testosterone that leaked from the nearby naval amphibious base in Coronado. It was a Friday night, which meant the floorboards were vibrating with the bass of classic rock and the boots of men who believed they were invincible. Lieutenant Commander Declan O'Malley sat at the center of the largest booth, flanked by 3 of his squad mates from DevGru. Declan was 34, with shoulders that strained the fabric of his black t-shirt and a scar running through his left eyebrow, a souvenir from a jagged piece of shrapnel in Yemen. He was loud, charismatic, and currently holding court, recounting a training mishaps with a Green Beret unit that had the table roaring with laughter. "I'm telling you," Declan shouted over the noise, slamming his empty glass down. The guy didn't know a breaching charge from a firecracker. I had to pull him back by his vest before he blew the door inward. "Easy, Deck," muttered Master Chief Marcus Bull Thorne, looking at his watch. "You're loud enough to wake the Admiral up the street." Declan grinned, signaling the bartender for another round. "Let him wake up. We earned this downtime. 2 weeks of leave starting tomorrow." His eyes drifted from his team, scanning the room out of habit. A SEAL never truly turned off his situational awareness. He clocked the exits, the bouncer by the door, the tourists in the corner looking nervous, and then his gaze snagged on the figure at the far end of the bar. She was sitting alone, which was rare in a place like this. Most women in the Rusty Rudder were surrounded by a phalanx of guys trying to buy them drinks. But she sat in a pocket of isolation, nursing a glass of amber liquid. Neat. She wore a dark leather jacket over a grey hoodie, dark jeans and boots that looked worn, not fashionable. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, efficient knot. She was reading a paperback book, completely ignoring the chaotic energy of the room. "Target at 3 o'clock, Declan murmured, nodding toward the bar. Bull glanced over. "Don't do it, Deck. She looks like she wants to be left alone." "She's in a SEAL bar on a Friday night," Declan scoffed, standing up and adjusting his belt. "Nobody comes here to be alone. She's probably waiting for a pilot to stand her up. I'll go save her evening." "She looks hard, man," Bull warned, narrowing his eyes. "Look at the posture, spine against the bar stool, facing the door in the mirror reflection. You're paranoid. Watch and learn." Declan wove through the crowd, flashing a smile that had worked on women in 5 different continents. He slid into the empty stool next to her, leaning an elbow on the bar to encroach slightly on her space, a dominance move he didn't even realize he was doing. "Heavy reading for a Friday," Declan said, his voice dropping an octave to a smooth baritone. The woman didn't jump. She didn't even look up immediately. She finished the paragraph she was reading, marked the page with a torn napkin, and slowly closed the book. When she finally turned to look at him, Declan felt a strange jolt in his chest. Her eyes were grey, icy and flat. There was no social warmth in them, no nervous flutter. She looked at him the way a coroner looks at a body, clinical and detached. "It's quieter than the conversation at your table," she said. Her voice was raspy, like she hadn't used it much in days. "You're O'Malley, right? The loud one?" Declan blinked, his smile faltering for a microsecond. "Word travels fast. I guess I have a reputation." "Noise travels fast," she corrected, taking a sip of her whiskey. "Reputations take longer." Declan laughed, stung but intrigued. "Feisty. I like that. I'm Declan, Navy. But you probably guessed that from the haircut and the company I keep." I guessed it from the arrogance and the fact that you're drinking a locally brewed IPA that tastes like pine needles because you think it makes you look cultured, she said, her face deadpan. Declan paused. He looked at his glass. It was exactly that. Okay, you're observant. You a cop, or maybe an ex-wife of someone on the teams? She turned her stool fully toward him. She wasn't tall, maybe 5'7", but she took up space in a way that made the air feel heavier. I'm just a traveler, Lieutenant Commander. Passing through. You know my rank? I can read the parking sticker sticking out of your back pocket, she lied. Declan checked. There was no sticker. She was reading him, dissecting him. He decided to push back. He leaned in closer, dropping the charm and letting a bit of the operator edge come out. You know, for a traveler, you sit like a shooter. Back straight, eyes on the mirror, checking the exits. You hold that glass with your non-dominant hand, so your right hand is free. Who are you, really? Does it matter? She asked, bored. It matters because this is my house, Declan said, his voice hardening. And I like to know who's walking through the front door. You've got the vibe, but you don't have the size. Intel? CIA field analyst? She sighed, signaling the bartender for the check. I'm leaving, O'Malley. Enjoy your leave. She stood up, and Declan, fueled by alcohol and a bruised ego, reached out and grabbed her forearm. It was a mistake. Before he could process the movement, she didn't pull away. She stepped into him. Her center of gravity dropped, her elbow flared, and she applied a subtle pressure to a nerve cluster in his wrist that made his entire arm go numb. He gasped, releasing her. She stood inches from his face. No one else in the bar had noticed the interaction. It was too fast, too professional. Don't touch me, she whispered. Declan rubbed his numb wrist, staring at her with wide eyes. Jesus. Okay, you're definitely not a civilian. What's your unit? What's your call sign? He asked it mockingly, trying to regain the upper hand. Come on, G.I. Jane. What do they call you on the radio? Cupcake? Peaches? The woman stared at him. The ambient noise of the bar seemed to fade into a dull roar. Her grey eyes locked onto his pupils, searching for something. She leaned in close, her lips brushing his ear, and whispered 2 words. Viper 1. Declan felt the blood drain from his face. His hand, reaching for his beer, went limp. The glass tipped over, crashing onto the bar top, beer foaming over the edge and dripping onto his boots. He didn't move to clean it up. He didn't breathe. He just froze, staring at the woman who was now walking toward the door, her leather jacket swallowing her into the night. Viper 1, he whispered to the empty air. Bull Thorne was at Declan's side in 3 seconds. Deck, what the hell happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. Declan was trembling. It was a subtle tremor in his hands, the kind usually reserved for the aftermath of a firefight when the adrenaline crash hits. He ignored the bartender, who was angrily wiping up the spilled beer. Viper 1, Declan said, his voice hollow. She said her call sign was Viper 1. Bull's face went slack. The joviality vanished instantly. That's not funny, Deck. Don't joke about that. I'm not joking, Declan snapped, spinning around to face his friend. She knew the hold, Bull. She hit my radial nerve like she's done it 1,000 times. And she said it. Viper 1. It's impossible, Bull said, shaking his head. Viper 1 is a myth. And even if the operator was real, that was Afghanistan, 2017. That was the Kunar province op. That op is redacted to hell and back. I know where it was, Declan shouted, drawing looks from nearby tables. He lowered his voice, grabbing Bull by the vest. I was there. You were there. We were all going to die in that valley until Viper 1 opened up. The memory hit Declan like a physical blow. November 2017, Kunar Province, Afghanistan. The mission had gone sideways immediately. Declan's team, Bravo Platoon, had been tasked with capturing a high-value Taliban commander in a village nestled deep in a valley. The intel was bad. It wasn't a safe house. It was a fortress. They were pinned down in a dried-up riverbed. RPGs were skipping off the rocks above their heads. Machine gun fire was chewing up the cover. They had 2 wounded. Comms were patchy due to the terrain. "Control, this is Bravo 1. We are pinned. We need immediate air support." Declan had screamed into his radio, grit and blood in his mouth. "Negative, Bravo 1. Air is 20 mics out. You are on your own," came the sterile reply from Tok. Declan had looked at Bull, seeing the resignation in his friend's eyes. They were outflanked. The Taliban fighters were moving down the ridges, closing the net. Then, a new voice had cut through the static on the team frequency. It wasn't Tok. It was a calm, almost robotic female voice. No panic, just ice. "Bravo 1, this is Viper 1. I have eyes on your position. I am positioned on the northern ridge, elevation 2000. Stand by." "Who is this?" Declan had yelled. "There are no friendlies in this sector." "Identify the machine gun nest at your 10 o'clock, the female voice commanded. "Keep your heads down." A second later, a single crack echoed through the valley. It wasn't the chugging sound of an AK-47, but the thunderous boom of a large caliber sniper rifle. The machine gunner on the ridge simply disintegrated. "Target down," the voice said. "Adjusting for wind. 3 targets moving on your east flank." Crack, crack, crack. For 15 minutes, the voice of Viper 1 guided them. She was a guardian angel, raining death from a position that should have been impossible to reach. She called out enemy movements before they happened. She provided covering fire with impossible precision. When the extraction choppers finally arrived, Declan had scanned the northern ridges with his optics, desperate to see who had saved them. He saw nothing, just the wind whipping the dust. When they got back to base, he demanded to know who Viper 1 was. The JSOC commander had told him to drop it. "There is no Viper 1. You were supported by a ghost. Be thankful you're alive." Back in the bar, Declan pushed past Bull. "I have to find her." "Dec, wait! If that is her, she's Black Ops. ISA. Maybe something deeper. You don't chase people like that." "She's here, Bull. In San Diego. That means something is happening. You don't bring a haunting out of retirement for a standard rotation." Declan sprinted out of the bar, bursting through the front doors into the cool night air. The street was busy with taxis and sailors, but he spotted her. She was half a block away, walking toward a black SUV idling at the curb. "Hey!" Declan roared, sprinting down the sidewalk. "Hey! Viper!" He knew using the call sign in public was a violation of every protocol in the book, but he didn't care. The woman stopped. She didn't turn around immediately. The rear door of the SUV opened, and a man in a suit stepped out, looking toward Declan with alarm. The woman raised a hand, stopping the suit. She turned slowly to face Declan as he skidded to a halt 10 feet from her. "You have a big mouth, Lieutenant Commander," she said, her voice carrying over the traffic. "It was you," Declan panted, his chest heaving. "Kunar. 2017. You were on the ridge." "I don't know what you're talking about," she said smoothly. "I'm just a tourist." "Liar," Declan stepped forward. "You knew about the jam in my rifle. You called it out over the comms. You said, 'Clear your chamber, Bravo 1. Only someone watching through a scope could have seen that." She stared at him, and for a moment, the mask slipped. A flicker of shared trauma passed between them. She looked tired. "Go home, Declan. Forget you saw me. For your own safety." "Why are you here?" he demanded. Before she could answer, the man in the suit intervened. "Ma'am, we need to move. The package is secure." "Ma'am?" Declan repeated. "He calls you ma'am?" The woman sighed. She reached into her leather jacket. Declan flinched, instincts flaring, but she didn't pull a gun. She pulled out a challenge coin and flicked it through the air. Declan caught it reflexively. It was heavy, black metal. On one side was the Navy SEAL. On the other, a coiled viper wrapped around a globe, with no unit designation, just the Latin phrase, mors ex tenebris, death from darkness. "If you really want to know," she said, her voice grim, "report to Hangar 4 at North Island Naval Station at 600 tomorrow, and bring your gear, full kit." "Who are you?" Declan asked again, gripping the coin. "I'm the person they call when the SEALs aren't enough," she said. She got into the SUV. As the door closed, Declan saw the window roll down one last time. "Name's Sarah," she said, "and you still owe me a drink for saving your ass in the valley." The SUV peeled away, merging into the traffic, leaving Declan standing on the sidewalk, clutching the black coin, his mind racing. He wasn't on leave anymore. He had just been drafted into something much darker. The morning fog rolled off San Diego Bay, thick and grey, swallowing the massive shapes of the destroyers docked at the pier. At 05:45, Lieutenant Commander Declan O'Malley and his team, Master Chief Bull Thorne, Petty Officer Miller, Comms, and Petty Officer Sketch, D'Angelo, Breacher, stood outside the restricted access door of Hangar 4. They were all hungover, irritable, and confused. "I'm telling you," Declan muttered, checking his gear bag for the third time. "The coin is real. I ran the markings last night through the secure database. It flagged as Level 5 access only, and then my screen went black and locked me out for an hour. Whatever this is, it's above the Admiral's pay grade." Bull spat on the concrete. "If this is a prank, Deck, I'm going to put you in the hospital." The hangar door buzzed and slid open with a hydraulic hiss. A master-at-arms checked their IDs without a word and pointed them toward a partitioned briefing room in the center of the cavernous space. Inside, the atmosphere changed instantly. The humidity of the bay was replaced by the sterile, recycled air of a tactical operations center, TOSE. Maps of the South China Sea glowed on massive LED screens. Drone feeds cycled through live surveillance footage. Standing at the head of the table was a man in a tailored suit, the same man from the SUV, but Declan's eyes went immediately to the figure standing next to him. It was Sarah. Gone was the leather jacket and the casual bar demeanor. She was dressed in Crye-Precision combat fatigues, tailored and devoid of patches, save for a single black flag on her shoulder. Her hair was braided tight against her scalp. She wore a sidearm on her thigh, a customized SIG P226, and she looked every inch the operator he had suspected she was. But there was something else. A hardness in her eyes that made the SEALs in the room, men who had killed for their country, shift uncomfortably. "Gentlemen," the suit began. "I am Director Vance, CIA Special Activities Center. You are here because your leave has been cancelled. You have been seconded to Task Force 121 for an immediate direct action mission." "Seconded?" Declan stepped forward, his jaw tight. "With all due respect, sir, we operate under NavSpec War Command. We don't take orders from the agency." "You do today," Sarah said. Her voice cut through the room, sharp and authoritative. She didn't look at Declan, she looked at the map. "Because where we're going, the Navy doesn't officially exist. And if we get caught, you'll wish you were dead before the cameras start rolling." Declan bristled. "And who are you exactly? Besides a woman who likes to play games in bars?" Sarah turned slowly. The room went dead silent. She picked up a laser pointer and clicked it, illuminating a grainy photo of a massive container ship fighting through a storm. "I am the person who pulls the trigger when the president doesn't want his fingerprints on the gun," she said calmly. "My designation is classified. You can call me Mom, or you can call me Viper. I don't care which, as long as you follow my lead. This is the MV Kestrel. It's a rogue freighter registered in Liberia, currently navigating a typhoon in the Philippine Sea." She zoomed in on a shipping container on the deck. "Intel suggests the Kestrel is transporting a prototype EMP device stolen from a DARPA contractor in Okinawa 3 days ago. If that device reaches its buyer in the port of Shanghai, the balance of power in the Pacific shifts overnight. We have a 4-hour window to intercept, board, secure the package, and sink the ship to cover our tracks." "Sink it?" Bull asked, skepticism heavy in his voice. "In a typhoon?" "The storm is our cover," Sarah replied. "The waves are 30 feet. Visibility is 0. No satellites, no radar. We jump high altitude, high opening, ha-ho, glide 20 clicks, and land on the deck. We secure the device, rig the hull with charges, and extract via Fulton recovery system before the ship goes under." "That's suicide," Miller whispered. "Hey-ho in a typhoon? We'll be scattered over 10 miles of ocean." Sarah looked at Miller, then at Declan. "It's not suicide. It's a Tuesday. I've done the drift calculations myself. You stick to my wing, you land on the deck. You drift, you die alone in the dark. Are there any other questions?" Declan stared at her. He saw the calculation in her eyes. This wasn't bravado. She had done this before. He realized suddenly that the Viper 1 from the valley wasn't just a sniper. She was something far more dangerous. She was a ghost. "You're leading the jump?" Declan asked, his voice losing its edge. "I'm leading the mission, O'Malley," she said, locking eyes with him. "You're just the muscle. Try to keep up." 3 hours later, the ramp of the C-130 yawned open into a howling black void. At 25,000 feet, the typhoon was a physical force, threatening to tear them from the aircraft. Declan checked his altimeter. Beside him, Sarah stood on the edge of the ramp, staring into the abyss. She tapped her helmet. The signal. Green light. She dove. Declan followed instantly, plummeting into the freezing slipstream. The freefall was violent, the wind sheer tossing the seals like rag dolls, but Sarah's voice cut through the static, calm and robotic. "Bravo, team. Adjust heading 2 degrees north. Hold formation." She guided them through the squall with the same terrifying precision she had used in the valley years ago. Out of the darkness, the MV Kestrel appeared, a steel leviathan pitching violently in the swells. They hit the wet steel of the deck hard, magnetizing their boots to stay standing. "Move!" Sarah ordered, flowing over the wet containers like liquid shadow. Resistance was immediate. Mercenaries poured out of the superstructure. A hostile appeared on the level above, leveling an RPG. Before Declan could scream a warning, a single shot cracked through the wind. Sarah hadn't even stopped moving. She fired one-handed while vaulting a crate, dropping the man instantly. "Less looking. More shooting, O'Malley," she said over the comms. They breached the cargo hold, a cavernous space lit by red emergency lights. In the center sat the target container. Sarah knelt by the EMP device, her hands moving with blinding speed as she bypassed circuits. Suddenly, the heavy iron door behind them slammed shut. From the catwalks above, a dozen mercenaries emerged, weapons trained on the team. The leader, a scarred Russian giant, laughed. "There is no extraction," he shouted. "You die here." Declan raised his rifle, but they were exposed and outgunned. "Sarah, we need a plan." "I have a plan," she said, not looking up from the bomb. "Duck." "What?" "Duck." Declan dropped to his knees, just as Sarah slammed her hand onto a large red button on the console. He expected an explosion. Instead, a high-frequency sonic pulse erupted from the machine. The mercenaries on the catwalk screamed, clutching their ears as their equilibrium shattered. They stumbled and fell, incapacitated by the agony. Sarah and the team, protected by active noise-cancelling headsets tuned to filter the frequency, stood tall. "Clear the room," Sarah yelled. It was a massacre. The SEALs neutralized the disoriented threat in seconds. "Hull charges set," Sketch yelled. 2 minutes. "Grab the drive," Sarah ordered. "Forget the casing." They sprinted back to the deck, the storm raging harder. The Fulton recovery balloon, a skyhook system, was their only way out. As they hooked their harnesses to the line, Declan looked at Sarah. She was wet with rain and oil, her eyes burning with adrenaline. "You triggered the pulse knowing it wouldn't hit us," Declan shouted over the wind. "How did you know?" "I read the manual before we jumped," she smirked. The C-130 roared overhead, snatching the line. The jolt was bone-crushing as they were yanked from the deck, soaring into the black sky just as the charges detonated below, swallowing the ship into the deep. The quiet after 2 days later, the rusty rudder was quiet. Declan sat in the booth, nursing a beer. When she walked in, she was back in jeans and the leather jacket. She slid into the booth opposite him. "You look terrible, O'Malley," she said. "I feel terrible," Declan admitted. He slid the black challenge coin across the table. "I ran the markings. Level 5 access. This belongs to you." Sarah pushed it back. "Keep it. You kept up. You didn't freeze on the deck." "I froze in the bar," Declan smiled, "because I realized I was talking to a legend. Viper 1, the ghost of Kunar." "Sarah," she corrected softly. "Just Sarah." "Okay, Sarah." Declan raised his glass. "To ghosts." She clinked her glass against his, the ice in her eyes finally melting. "To the living. And to reading the damn manual." Declan laughed. He knew he would never know her full story. But as he sat with the woman who had saved his life twice, he knew one thing for sure. He would never judge a book by its cover again. Especially not one that could kill him with a paperclip. Sometimes, the toughest warrior in the room isn't the one bragging the loudest. It's the one sitting quietly in the corner, watching, waiting, and ready to strike. Declan O'Malley learned that lesson the hard way. He found humility in the face of true greatness and a bond forged in the fires of combat that no rank can define. If you enjoyed this story of action, suspense, and the hidden heroes among us, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. And tell me in the comments, do you think Declan and Sarah will ever team up again? Thanks for watching.